Hi, everybody. David Nour. I want to welcome you to another monthly webinar in our series. Every month, if you haven't seen me present, I talk about strategic relationship challenges and opportunities that we continue to see in working with professional service firms in really bringing the Avnir platform or environment to the market, certainly with our cohort of early customers. And my goal with these is to share with you getting beyond the logical and what seems potentially really obvious to most of us with, hold on a second, are you guys really paying attention to what's happening? So I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X. I'm going to watch inbound comments, questions, issues that come up, and I would encourage you to jump in with questions that I can help clarify as I go through both. I want to show you just some lenses, some perspectives, some things we're thinking about, but also I'm going to jump into the platform and give you a glimpse into some of the things that we've been working on. So this episode is called, winning the deal before the RFP. I got to tell you, I've got a love-hate relationship with RFPs because I've seen them turn into opportunities, actual deals, and yet they are royal pain. And an old manager drove into me years ago, never respond to an RFP that didn't help write. So I would submit to you that the best deals aren't won, they're co-created. And I wrote a book on this topic. They're co-created even before the RFP drops. So before you hear about an opportunity, before that opportunity hits the street, as we're going to talk about it, somebody else has influenced it. Somebody else has whispered in the ears of that economic buyer that they should prioritize, and the optionality and what they can look into. So I want to talk to you about how to become more intentional and more strategic in this process. So we got to talk about a very dangerous assumption, which a lot of consulting or even professional service firms, a lot of even professionals have this belief that we win deals because we write exceptional proposals. Have you seen how great our proposal is? We're really good at writing proposals. And yet, when I start asking some questions, like, why do so many firms lose opportunities that they should actually win because they had better credentials, they had better expertise, they had better teams, they had better pricing, and they even had very relevant experiences? The uncomfortable answer is really many deals are effectively decided before the RFP is even released. Think of the RFP as that client's risk mitigation strategy, not truly their evaluation process. What are we not thinking about? Let's go test the market. Let's go make sure the pricing we've heard, the configuration we've heard, the packaging we've heard, right, is consistent with the market dynamics. So again, I see RFPs as a risk, right, mitigation strategy, not necessarily one to evaluate the viable options. And the myth is it's a fair fight, which it really isn't. The biggest lie is the process appears to be fair. Everyone receives the same requirements. Everyone gets the same deadline. Everyone submits a proposal. But the outcomes are rarely equal because not everyone starts at the same place. And the gap you see at the bottom of the screen, I need you to see, and I wish I'd done it, relationships and strategic relationships and co-creation as that gap. So if you want the head start, I think you're going to have to think a little differently about what RFPs mean to our business. How do we become better at doing this? So the deals that are really won, the decision happens before procurement. The decision is well underway. Think about it. Before that RFP drops, someone has already identified the problem. Here's fundamentally a challenge, a struggle, something we got to work on, right? Somebody's defined the scope, Someone has shaped the evaluation criteria. Someone has influenced the buying committee. Someone else has already established that trust. So the firms that are involved in these conversations, some of the conversations you're not in, some of the rooms you're not in, have an enormous strategic advantage. And that advantage is that starting place that's significantly stronger than everybody else. So every firm I've ever met has one of these. We should have won that deal, right? You had strong credentials, you had relevant experiences, you had competitive pricing, and you still lost. Why? Other firms entered the process months earlier, and they weren't responding to the opportunity. They were helping to shape it, to create it, to define it in many ways for their advantages, for stacking the deck against what they brought to the table. And you were waiting in an email for an RFP to drop in your hands. Again, the mindset shift has to become, you need to start thinking of every RFP as a risk mitigation. They already know what they're looking for. They already know what's in the market. Gartner recently released some research that shows like 86% of the customers, do 86% of their buying or due diligence before they ever talk to a vendor. So who's shaping their thinking? Who's shaping the way they go to market? Who's shaping how they decide of what's interest and what's of value? And unfortunately, the win rates continue to fall, right? Why? Modern buying process has evolved. We kind of intuitively know this, but we don't think about it. Average consulting firms, every purchase, not just consulting, any kind of professional service, 8 to 12 stakeholders. You know one, you know two. So there's a whole lot of stakeholders that are involved that you have no visibility into. Cross-functional evaluation. Yeah, they're evaluating your services, but they're also thinking of its ripple effect or implications on other parts of their business. You have increased budget scrutiny, even at the highest firms with the most just unbelievable reputations, where $3 and $4 million engagements would be nothing. Now it's getting a whole lot of scrutiny at the 50 and 100K range. Consensus building. You might as well talk about this as, political, horse trading. But I'm trying to get different people with different agendas and priorities and bandwidth and willing to help and see a vested interest in this all get aligned on the same page. Risk mitigation. How do we make sure we're making the right decision, especially if you're asking for a multi-year, or if it's a complex, or it's going to touch a lot of different parts of the business. So the days of a single decision maker, particularly mid-market and up, right? If you're dealing with a small business and there's one owner, even that owner is probably going to go to a couple of different people before they make that decision. So this rise of a decision by committee, right? That the real buyer is a group. Right? Most firms still are selling to they think I'm selling to an individual, right? One person who makes that decision. Realistically, economic, technical, operational, procurement, executive sponsor, and they all influence the outcome. Particularly since, this is really important, particularly if they all have competing agendas, particularly if they're all struggling with different priorities and different set of issues and different, right? What's on their plate? I literally was talking to an executive yesterday. I said, listen, the last thing I need is another vendor. What he's saying is, I'm looking for opportunities for people to take stuff off my plate. And by the way, I have 3 people on my team evaluating that. Those 3 people, you have no visibility into. So the visibility gap, and you need to hear this, what you cannot see is costing you. Because you may know the person who issued the RFP, but who influenced it? Who approved it? It's got to go through some sort of a right? Budgeting or allocation or resource process, right? Who opposes it? Within the organization, who is adamantly against this direction, this investment, this trade-off of if we invest in that technology, that means it's a headcount that we can't hire, or if we hire that headcount, it's a technology we can't implement. So who is, I call these your quiet deal assassins? Who are the people that oppose it? Who benefits from it most? Who's gonna, the ripple effect of this thing? Yeah, we might be changing a system here, but if it dramatically influences or impacts our supply chain, or if it impacts our vendor or partner relationships, our work abroad, right? Who would greatly benefit from that? Who already trusts your competitors? Who already has a relationship with them from their previous job, and they really like to bring them over and have this new company work with that group again? So you ask these questions of, okay, you know who issued it, but who does the rest? And unfortunately, most firms don't have an answer. I was recently working with a leadership team, and we talked a lot about this org chart on the left of where and how, reporting lines and roles and responsibilities happen versus the influence map on the right. So the org chart on the left, influence map on the right, I think most of you would agree that decisions are rarely made where authority sits. It's made through the trusted operators and the external connectors, and who are the advisors, who are the idea shapers. I did a session recently for a client on relationship mapping, and I talked a lot about idea shapers. Heavily influenced. They become the guardrails. They become the Sherpa. They become the guide of where the organization goes. So advisors that are in and outside the organization, a lot of times board members who bring deep expertise in that area, trusted operators who are very good at what they do. All of these influencers live in an informal network, not your traditional org chart that many believe impact the business. So if you're just joining us, we're live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on X. I'm talking about really being more intentional, really focusing on the relationships ideally before. So winning the deal before the RFP hits has a lot more to do, as you're looking at the screen, on the influence chart, influence map on the right, and less so with the organization potentially structure on the left. So people who go in, you're either gonna go, there's only two options. You're either gonna go in warm or you're gonna go cold, right? So let's look at the competitive advantage. Firm A receives an RFP. Firm B helps shape that initiative 6 months earlier. One responds, the other is co-creating. Any guesses on who wins? Yeah, the one on the right. Because going in cold is an unbelievably expensive way to sell, right? Longer sales cycle, lower trust, much more scrutiny. Who are these guys again? Unbelievable pricing pressure. You look at win-loss analysis of almost any firm. The ones you go in cold typically have dramatically, not just incrementally, dramatically a lower win rate. So you begin as a stranger. You begin as an unknown entity. Conversely, going in warm, that strategic relationship advantage, the warm entry. You have stronger context of what's going well and what's not in the organization. You're dramatically more credible because they've had some experiences in working with you. You've earned the trust, or you're writing or borrowing somebody else's trust. You have access to information and people you need to intelligently think about how to solve it. And a lot of times you have advocates. Advocacy within that account makes you a known quantity, makes you a known entity, and that changes everything. As I said earlier, if you think of RFPs as a risk mitigation strategy, going with a known entity, by definition, dramatically lowers that temperature, dramatically lowers who are we dealing with. and how can these people help us solve real problems. So relationship economics principles here come in handy in terms of thinking about, as I said, I wish I'd written relationships in that initial track image you saw, because it changes the starting conditions. So most firms focus on improving their RFP execution. Strategic firms really focus on improving their starting conditions. Those are two fundamentally different lenses to focus on. Can we get a warm introduction? Do we have trusted referrals? Do we have shared experiences? Have we fundamentally established that credibility? These dramatically alter the outcomes. These dramatically give the firms who focus on their starting conditions a much better position, a much better advantage in this completely unfair fight. And if you've seen me talk on relationship economics, if you've read any of my work, the beginning, the investment, the deposits of this process in bridging relationship creation to relationship capitalization makes all the difference in the world. As such, the co-created advantage, right, before the opportunity exists, how do I win? How do I put myself and my team in the best possible position to win that opportunity? Top of the page. Emerge when you help the client, clarify the problem, frame opportunities. I'm trying to tell you, no client of mine needs more information. What they need is foresight. What they need is help us see around the corner. So are you helping them explore options? Are you reducing risk? Are you building, a lot of times, internal alignment, right? Even before they issue an RFP. And what co-create looks like is not selling. It's not wearing your eagerness on your sleeve. Let me tell you how great we are. It's you're collaborating. You are fundamentally adding unique value to what you, by providing insights, by sharing, here's what we see in the market. Here's how we work with our best clients, by introducing experts. I'm going to turn it over to Tom, my colleague, who happens to be an economist and is going to talk about what the tariff situation, what the Strait of Hormuz, what all these geopolitical issues are going to have dramatic impact on that piece of your business. Oh my gosh, now we've got real insights, real valuable insights that we can benefit from. It's facilitating conversations. I love peer gatherings of equal business stature executives who, in private, but they share their challenges, their opportunities amongst peers. And it's really helping to shape their strategy. So this builds, the bottom of the page, builds that much needed trust, that enabler of your success long before the procurement ever shows up, long before procurement ever comes to the table. And what we've seen is this kind of relationship maturity curve. So think about it a second. 4 ways firms engage. On the left bottom left corner, you're reactive. You're responding to an RFP. And buyers know this. That firm is always good for responding to an RFP. Let's make sure they're on the list. Let's make sure they get an at-bat, right? Second stage, you're proactive. You're proactively pursuing opportunities. Third one, collaborative. You're helping to shape opportunities. The pinnacle of this is your strategic. When you co-create future opportunities, pending needs, this is where that organization is headed. They're going to have some not just recognized needs, right, but impending needs, and ultimately needs they didn't even realize they have. Needs you create absolutely sets you apart. The challenge is most firms never move beyond proactive. The collaborative and the strategic seems to be elusive. And in many ways, I would submit, it's not really thinking about this value pyramid. I've talked about this extensively in the book, about how to be more intentional about the relationships you choose to invest in. And it absolutely has a multiplier effect, right? So some relationships are going to amplify your value in that account or external to it. But not all relationships are created equal. So the multipliers expand your reach. Again, within that account, within accounts like it, they fundamentally accelerate your trust. They fundamentally create access to new networks, new opportunities that you knew nothing about. And one multiplier relationship is often significantly stronger than a whole lot of passive contacts. And I've used this analogy before of if you've ever played a dynamic sport like soccer or hockey or lacrosse, you know that 90% of these games are played when you don't have the ball. So the best teams are comprised of players who are always asking, where should I be? What should I be doing? How do I put myself and my team in the best possible position so when we do get the ball, when we get the puck, we can do something with it? And when it comes to the RFPs, number one, you need to see that pitch as the market. The RFP is the ball. If the RFP is an opportunity, it's the ball. So if 90% of the game is played when you don't have the ball, where should you be? What should you be doing? How do you put yourself and your team in the best possible position so when we do get the ball, we can do something with it? And I'm often coaching teams and clients, start building these influence maps. Start relying much more on trust and expertise and relationships than based on titles and reporting lines. I'm not taking anything away from the right-hand side. That side is critical. But what can the influence side bring that could be dramatically more impactful? And if you do an exercise yourself, right, the last deal you lost, just ask, who influenced the decision? Who did we know? Who did we not know? Who knew our competitors? What conversation happened without us? The answers are often unbelievably revealing because it gives you a glimpse into access does not equate to trust, and trust does not equal to influence. Let me say that again. Access to someone, access to an account does not equate to trust. As you build and nurture that trust, it does not equate to influence. Are you influencing the deal? Are you influencing the potential outcomes? So the relationship coverage, right? If you think of a new competitive advantage, most firms assess pipelines and revenue coverage and territory. Few assess relationship coverage. Who's got who covered? Influence coverage. Do we know where those sources of influence are? Are there some hidden sources of influence we don't know? And then trust coverage. Are we trusted at a department or a function, or are we trusted at the organization level? Those are the ones that fundamentally set people apart, set organization apart. So that's what we're trying to do with Avnir. And now I'm excited that we also have a mobile app in test flight. So the goal is, and I want to go there a second and really share with you and show you some examples of the things that we've built or we're working on to be more intentional about what are those fundamental capabilities? What are those fundamental functionalities that are critical? So let me share my screen, and I wanna, let me see, I wanna share just a handful of ideas that might be relevant to our discussions, right? So first and foremost, if you look at the top of the screen here, you can see a set of goals, right? Goal performance is a huge part of what we're trying to do, and being, again, really proactive with each of these goals. And let's say it's a revenue goal. How much have I booked? What my pipeline is? More importantly, what are the relationships that are critical to that? If I go back one, right, and making sure we go back to this, making sure those call to actions and the relationship engagements are very relevant to that goal. Along the same lines, right? Really important that you think about this map, this influence map that I'm talking about, right? If you're on the left-hand side, where's your bridge? Where's your access to? Sometimes you have to go through low influence to get to mid and higher, but do we really understand who those highly influential people are at very different organizations and very different paths to get there? So we believe this is going to be of enormous value. The other thing that I wanted to show you is everything like, if I'm trying to get introduced to someone, if I'm trying to really identify what relationships are at risk, if I'm trying to really build a proactive cadence with my most important relationships, these are critical in helping you be, again, more intentional. So before that RFP comes out, I have a good understanding of the account's dynamics and a good understanding of their challenges and opportunities. And I've identified the critical relationships that are going to make or break us. That's one of the things that a lot of people kind of miss out on, are those hidden relationships that you're not thinking about. So again, there's a lot more to cover here. There's a lot more focus on, and just a couple of thoughts that I want to leave you with. Early engagement strategy. So the sooner that you become visible before the initiative launch, the more you understand and you monitor the strategic priorities, the more you stay close to key stakeholders, those become invaluable. If you create value, this is one that a lot of people don't really think about, which is, are we creating sufficient value before the opportunity is in front of us, before the opportunity is critical to our success? Those are some really smart early engagement strategies. The key is you got to create trust before procurement. So if you build trust after the RFP, that's really difficult. Try to build, trust before the RFP. It starts to compound, and by the time procurement comes to the table, the trust is really established, ideally with that executive or with that team that you want to work with. The unfair advantage that we've seen, again, if I go back to this slide early on that I said, there's a very real, let me share that screen. There's a very real unfair advantage in this fight. This unfair advantage is really strategic relationships, because they create asymmetry. If you learn earlier, if you gain context, if you access influencers, if you reduce uncertainty, this isn't manipulation, it's relationship leadership. And the relationship-rich firms win, right? That finish line, they win because they don't chase. Despite popular belief, they're not chasing every RFP. They identify the opportunities earlier, they cultivate influence very deliberately, and they invest in that trust before it becomes urgent, before our hair is on fire because this RFP is out. So they create opportunities instead of merely responding to them. And again, I brought up this maturity model. In this maturity model, right, really critical to think about the future of business development. If you keep waiting for the RFPs, instead of, how do we see it earlier? How do we engage earlier? How do we create value earlier? How do we build and nurture trust amongst individuals that are those idea shapers? Who in this, again, chart on the right can we co-create with? So what I want you to think about is the deals that are not won in the proposal validate, the proposal validates the decision. The relationships often create them. So think about your next strategic opportunity. And that's really the kind of parting thoughts on this is, are you planning or responding to RFPs? Are you positioning yourself to help create them, help shape them, help define what are must-have versus nice-to-haves? Or are you, again, reacting, responding to those? One approach competes. The other heavily influences the direction, the guidance that the organization goes through. And if you want social proof, if you want a client reality, what high growth firms that we've worked with consistently do differently, they prioritize the relationship coverage over contact counts. It doesn't matter that you got 20,000 contacts on LinkedIn. How many of them are you proactively nurturing? They map that influence before they begin the pursuits. They identify warm paths, right? What's the best path? What's the warm path for me before the outreach to get there? They engage around business issues, not sales opportunities. I was reading something early this morning that directly relates to one of my clients. And I reached out and said, hey, I read this. I think this would be really impactful to what you're trying to do. Would love to schedule a quick Zoom for us to talk about it. It's not a sales pitch. It's not it's not a sales opportunity. It's, I thought of you. I believe this approach or this conversation we had might be instrumental to your success. Let's figure out how to, if there's an opportunity with me or without me, work together on solving that. So what I want to do is be that trusted advisor, that trusted confidant before. I don't like being called a vendor. I don't want to be a vendor. And I think it's critical to kind of set yourself apart from that early and often. So in terms of what's next, again, hope you will be, this is of value to you, but our team will send you a follow-up email with a link to we have a relationship assessment. By the way, brand new Avnir.com. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, Sarah on the team has done an amazing job, amazing job. If you've not been there, I would encourage you to go check it out. As a matter of fact, let me just go over there real quick, and I want to highlight a couple of things that I think might be particularly useful in terms of Chrome tab, Avnir. Okay, there we go. So this is our new website, Avnir.com. Obviously, you can read some of the progress, but we talk about the platform. So what we're trying to do in relationship intelligence and really thinking about those warm introductions, and you get a glimpse into that approach. Why Avnir? By the way, in a time where people are trying to replace the human element, we believe we can build an AI platform that amplifies that human element, that, by the way, closes deals. There are very specific industries that we're focused on, so you can check those out. And here's the core truth. The verticals, we're doing a lot of work right now in management consulting and professional services. The executive search, I'm fascinated by, because in essence, they have to keep two sides of the marketplace warm. I know they don't get paid by the candidates, but that's your supply. And I want to make sure that the supply or the demand of the customers who pay us are taken care of. We just signed on a couple of financial services clients in my involvement with Association for Corporate Growth. There's some staffing and recruiting we're talking to, and of course, enterprise go-to-market and enterprise sales teams. And all of these, what they have in common is critical to really leverage relationships. On the resources, I would encourage you, come check out. There is blogs here, all of our upcoming webinars, including the one I'm doing next time on the summer, nobody's watching, but also a relationship economics coaching program that I'm launching later this month, early next, on how to deepen your C-suite relationships. You can learn about all of those. Those are on the website. And of course, about us, about our team and what we're trying to do and kind of the background of the team. So again, huge kudos to Sarah for her hard work on this and making sure the brand new website, Avnir.com, is of great value to again, our audience. But I hope, again, you'll check out the website. We're currently onboarding the next cohort of 20 early access design partners. And again, my next monthly session is Tuesday, 14th of July, 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to talk about the summer nobody's watching. So on behalf of our team, I hope this has been useful to you. I'm David Nour with Avnir. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everybody. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.